Hey guys, I haven't been on here for a minute. I've been out looking for a house because I cannot take this apartment any longer. But anyway, I wanted to come on here for a brief second and share some African American history. We hear so much from the divided community within the black community. You know, you have a lot of people that are still angry about slavery and continue to protest and claim white supremacy is the reason why the black community is doing so bad. They're stuck on victimhood. And you always hear that the Constitution is not for us, that it was pro-slavery. Well, I wanted to share something with you because we listen to a lot of talking heads on YouTube, the wrong ones at that, who don't know anything. And so they perpetuate a lot of the lies. But this is a little book. It's called American History in Black and White by David Barton. And I think what you will find in this book will be interesting if you only learn certain parts of history that was geared towards making you believe that America was really a racist country. Now, what I mean by that is that the entirety of this country, you know, was behind this slavery movement. Well, I'm going to take you back to Frederick Douglass. This is a prime example. Now, Frederick Douglass escaped from slavery in 1838 to New York. He went and he got with the abolitionists, and he sat under the teaching of William Lloyd Garrison. Now, he taught Frederick Douglass that the Constitution was a pro-slavery document. But then later on, as you read Frederick Douglass' writings, he says he had it all wrong. The Constitution is not pro-slavery. It's actually anti-slavery, for there is not one word of slavery in the document. And so you hear a lot of people say when to back up their claims about the Constitution being not for the black people, they go to this 3/5 clause, and a lot of these people don't even know what the 3/5 clause meant. Well, let me break it down to you. You see, during that time, it took 30,000 individuals to have one representative in Congress. So, the pro-slavery Confederate South wanted to start counting their slaves so they can get more representative, more racist Confederate people in Congress to keep this slavery movement going. Because you see, when they succeeded from the Union, they did not want to give up this good thing they had going in the South. You know, disenfranchising the black people and holding them in bondage. So, when they went and argued this in Congress, so Congress, they had this big old argument, and the South was saying that they were going to count the slaves. So the North said, wait a minute, didn't you just say the slaves was property? How is it that you're going to count them and you look at them as property? If you want them counted, look at them as citizens. Make them citizens. Recognize them as men, as human beings, so they will have the right to vote. But they didn't want to do that. They just wanted to use them to continue their pro-slavery movement. So the North said, okay, well, if you're going to count your property, we are going to count our horses, our cattle, our tables, our chairs. And they said, no. Wait a minute. That is not going down. So the compromise, the 3/5 compromise, instead of 30,000 individuals to get one vote in Congress, now it takes 3/5 of the slave population. It would take 50,000. So this was an anti-slavery compromise, because it will lessen their chances of getting more people who lean towards pro-slavery thought of representatives in office. But you know what else is interesting? Because a lot of the youth today. And even I believed this growing up, because we've all been told this lie that the Democratic Party was for the black people. But now it's so interesting how things come full circle. We started out as Republicans, and I love to hear Killer Mike talk, because that man can rattle off this history. Whomever educated him did a very good job. I love to hear him go back and quote all that history. And you can be like that as well. You can go read this stuff for yourself. But it's interesting, as I was saying, how everything is coming full circle. The black community started off as Republicans, and you wouldn't dare see them voting Democrat, because they knew what Democrats meant and they knew what they stood for. And all throughout history, when they started enacting those constitutional civil rights amendments, Democrats, whether they were North or South, they banded together and would not put their vote. And the only time that the Republicans would gain momentum is when they had control of the House and Senate. Then they were able to get these constitutional amendments passed. And it's interesting that we had the most black representatives in Congress during that time under Republican presidents. But then, you know how it always flips when those racist Southern Democrats, those Confederates, would get in there. They would come up with something to get those black men out of Congress. So that's when they started coming up with, all these different things as far as literacy. They're not smart enough, and these black men was well educated. Read some of these quotes that they say in this book. You will be amazed at all of this history that is in this little book. This little book only cost me, I believe it was $8.95 on Amazon. They still have plenty more, and you can get you one. But once we got past the South agreeing to come back to the Union, because they said they, under the Reconstruction, that they will redo their laws, that they will recognize the black community and give them their full equal rights. But that was a ploy. They said one thing and they did another, and they fought and fought and fought all the way down to the 60s, and until it got to the point where they started doing the black codes and hide and seek with the ballot box, where you have, if you can find the booth to vote, then you can vote. Oh, the grandfather clause. Did your grandfather vote? Okay, you're allowed to vote. If it wasn't the grandfather clause, it was the poll tax. Knowing when the Africans came out of slavery, they didn't have any money to pay any poll tax to go vote. And then when it wasn't that, it was intimidation, violence, and lynchings. I bet you did not know that white Republicans was lynched right along with black Republicans. There was, let me quote you these numbers right quick. It says, of all forms of violence, intimidation, lynchings were the far most effective. Between 1882 and 1964, 4,743 individuals were lynched. 3,446 were blacks, and 1,297 were whites. Republicans often led the efforts to pass federal anti-lynching laws. That's something I learned from this book, because when I heard of lynchings, all I heard was only black people had been getting lynched. But when you start digging into this history for yourself and reading it, you see a different picture. And you know how they always tell us about the slave ship that traveled up during 1619 and boom, slavery burst on the scene in America? But they never tell you about that other slave ship before that one that came to Massachusetts, to the Christian Pilgrims, where they promptly arrested the ship's officers and sent those slaves back to Africa at the expense of the colony. No, they never tell you that. So you can't say that America is a racist country, because although it had racist elements within this country, there was a struggle that was going on within this country. And you had a lot of the founding fathers that were fighting for the freedoms of these Africans. Meanwhile, you had this other element, this evil element, that wanted to keep them in bondage and keep them and beat them like chattel, like property, treating them less than men. But this was not the sentiment of America. So I urge you to read for yourself. You know, sometimes people only want to push hate and to keep you angry. That is of an evil spirit. You know, you have to have an open mind. Sometimes people get that way because of some experiences that they have gone through. You know, like my father's generation, they had to deal with the colored fountains and for the bathrooms for the colored people, you know. So they have gone through those things, but that was not the sentiment of all American. Every time that Congress will try to pass laws to get them to capitulate, you know, evolve, join the rest of the world, they fought and fought and fought. And here we are today. And somehow they done flipped the black people by deception. And lo and behold, they chasing behind Democrats. I wish I could show you this picture right quick. The Democrats back then had put out this bill. It was voting time again. And they put out this little pamphlet. Look at this little boy with his fist balled up. Can you see that? See what the description says? Who's a Democrat? This is 1932 response to the invitation for blacks to vote Democratic. This is prepared by the Colored Division, Republican National Committee, Chicago, of all places, Chicago, Illinois. You wouldn't dare. They either didn't vote at all, you know. And poor people that was in the South, they had guns put to their heads, you know. You gonna vote Democrat, ain't that right, boy? You know, all that craziness. I don't see why so many people, black people, stayed in the South. But those people back then was of a different generation. Those people were strong. Those people didn't complain. They fought and fought and fought through all of that. But the black people today, they are so weak. They are of a different mindset, a different spirit. You know, you could tell the difference within the generations. Those people fought for everything, fought through it all. And here we are today, so privileged, crying out white supremacy in a country like this. But really what the problem is, people just didn't take advantage of the opportunities given to them. Because you can look all across the board, people that came out of horrible conditions. We all grew up in, you know, communities, bad public schools, and we found a way to make it to college, get a college degree, get a good paying job. You have communities, as I said before in another video, that have affluent black communities within America. Prince George community in Maryland, Ladera Heights in California, Baldwin Hills in California. You know, there's a section still in Tulsa, Oklahoma. You know, that was like the Black Wall Street back then. They still have a section over there that's kind of equivalent to like Baldwin Hills. So, you know, some people will make excuses for the poor choices that they made in life. But you know what's no more time for excuses. Like I said, stop listening to the wrong talking heads and go read this book. This is a small book. It will not take you long to finish it. And I guarantee you, once you pick it up, you will not put it down. And you will be shocked by all the things that you learn. And that's how I'm going to end it. And I'll catch you on the next one.